This is going to be epic because it's time for a massive fountain pen shootout. And today we're going to talk about not one, not two, not three, but 4 pens. 4 pens. Why do I do a shootout with 4 pens? Well, I intended to do a shootout of just 2 pens. The Surwex MB with the Flex Nib and the Noodler's Ahab. But while I was inking them up, I shot the writing part before I did this part, I thought I may have to add that old-fashioned Noodler's Nib Creeper Flex pen too. And then I thought if I add that, then I should probably add a Noodler's Conrad too. So now I'm staring at 4 pens, 4 inexpensive pens with flex. $14, $15, $20 each. Which one's best? What are the differences? Well, clearly these are flex pens, so I think the most sensible thing I can do is just show you the amount of flex these pens offer. But I'll just give you a very brief and basic rundown. I have done separate reviews of all of these pens. I will not go through all the details and all the motions of that again. If you're interested in a specific pen, just go to my channel, find the video, and you'll find a full-fledged review. For now, I'll just give you my thoughts. I'll start with the Surwex MB. I think of these 4 pens, this one is the most exclusive. It's not the most expensive, but it's all metal. That is something that may appeal to you. If you want a pen that looks a bit classy, you could take this to a business meeting. I think that would work. You could take this to a business meeting, but it would draw more attention, and sometimes that's just not something you would like to happen. It's all metal, it's sturdy, it's nice, has a good flex nib, not the flexies of the nibs in here, but it will definitely give you a lot of line variation. I think of the pens, this one has the smallest ink capacity. So it looks the classiest, but it has the smallest ink capacity because it just has a simple push type converter. So that's all there's to it, just a small converter. But, it looks classy, which is something you may enjoy. The Ahab is probably one of my favorite pens of all time. The reason for that is it's big, it's sturdy, it's completely home maintainable, if that's a word. You can take it apart, you can clean it, you can clean every bit of it, you can use it as an eyedropper. It has this fantastic, I really love that, this fantastic, you gotta be a little careful here because there's still ink in there, this fantastic converter, which you just, you pull that thing out, you push it back in. That's all there's to it. I think it's wonderful. Such a simple system, such an efficient system. I really love it. I just pour out the ink there. I think it's awesome. It has a huge ink capacity. I think as an eyedropper it holds 6 milliliters of ink. I know that doesn't sound like a whole lot, but if you imagine that, I think the Lamy 2000 holds, what, 1.2 milliliters or something? Then you see what a huge amount of ink that is. So that's very impressive. It comes in a bunch of different finishes, so if you don't like this, you can get colors like this. I like the overall shape a lot. I think it's a very cool pen. I like it. The Conrad, I had some issues with it when I got it. Those are documented in 2 videos actually on this pen. Now I used it again, and I was pleasantly surprised. Sometimes that happens. You put a pen away for a while, you come back to it, and I thought, wow, that nib is smooth. Wow, it does work well. So you may have to give this pen, I never said I wouldn't give it a second chance or anything. It's just not a pen that appealed a lot to me, and now that I just put it in a pouch for a while and came back to it, I like it. I think this is another pen that will look a bit classier. Again, you could take this to a business meeting. It's nice and toned down. It performs well. Again, you got to be aware of the cap threads within there fairly highly, so if the nib sticks out you may bend it, but you can repair that, and if you're aware of it, it should be fine. Same thing with the Surwax. There's a little thing, I'll show you that later on, but you can you can sort of snag the nib on there and bend it. That's just something to be aware of. In all, nice pen, piston filler, pretty big ink reservoir, so kind of nice. And then finally we have the Nib Creeper, simple pen, piston, piston filler, so again decent amount of ink. Not a huge nib, but it's, I think, about as big as the nib on the Surwax. So that's interesting. These come in a bunch of different colors. This is the one with the new feed model. I also have one with the old feed model, but you know, these are interchangeable. You can get them all with the new feed right now. I mean, all the finishes. And this is the smallest of the flex pens I've got lying in front of me. This was the first one Noodler's brought out, and I think it's still a very nice pen. It's decent. It's to my liking a bit too small, but you know, it'll work. Okay, so that's just a basic rundown. If you like bigger pens, Ahab or Conrad. If you like a business pen, Surwex MB or Conrad. You know, and otherwise, it's just a matter of how much flex do you need. They all offer comparable amounts of flex, but some are just flexier than others. I was surprised. I thought the Ahab would be the flexiest pen, and it wasn't. I'm not going to tell you which one it was. Let's keep it a little secret. No, I think it's just more fun to wait and see what happens. That's a rundown of the pens. I don't think I have anything else to say. Again, check out the full reviews if you want to see all the parts of the pens. I think you now need to see a writing sample and just decide for yourself which of these pens you like best. And that's all there's to it. Massive Shootout. I hope this was useful. I'll show you how to disassemble all the pens in the next part of the video. And that's all there's to it. So, enjoy, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye. Okay, so here we have the Surwex MB. Here we have the Noodler's Ahab pen. Both pens can be disassembled. The Noodler's pen is somewhat notorious for that. I mean, you can take apart everything. There's a breather tube, here's a feed and the nib, here's the converter, which I think is fantastic. It's so simple and it works so well. And as you can see, you can just take everything apart. So that's very, very nice. I always love it when I'm able to, you know, take a pen apart. Some people don't care for it that much, I think, but I think it's just nice. Okay, there we go. Goes in one way, easy to do. Breather tube goes in. Converter goes in. Barrel can be used as an eyedropper. Now, you know what? Leave that open. I have to ink it up in a minute. And the cap. Now, the Surwex MB. I almost said Mont Blanc, but I meant Surwex MB. You can actually disassemble that too. So, whoops, seems to be a little bit of ink in the cap. That's fine. So one thing to beware of is that in the cap, you probably can't see it very well, but there is a bit of a ridge in there. I think you see it just a little bit. And you can actually snag your nib on that. I'm touching it right now, and that would bend it. So when you cap this pen, I always take like a dipping motion. So when I show this from the side, I put it in like this. Well, that's somewhat exaggerated, but I put it in like this and then make this sort of motion like that. That way it just slides in smoothly. Okay, so you just take it apart, you take the barrel off, metal, you take the converter. The converter can be disassembled. It's a very simple push type converter with a piston in there, a la Parker. Parker sells these things too. You just open it up like that. You can take the piston out, you can put some silicone grease around that little rubber ring if you think the seal is not good anymore. And this is the ink reservoir, this is what fills with ink, and this is just the piston housing unit, and that's all there's to it. And then you got the nib and the feed. You just pull them out, they're friction fed, so here you got a feed, here you've got a nib, and here you've got your section. As far as I could see, there are no markings in the section that indicate that the nib has to go, you know, in a specific way, like this is the nib upside. It doesn't really matter, it's just a rounded thing. But if you get some issues, for example, you ink up the pen and drops of ink keep, you know, falling from the nib, then there's something wrong with the alignment. So you should figure out how it works then. The nib, as you can see, has a deep slit. If you compare it, oh, I don't actually have to. Well, okay, I'll pull that out again. If you compare the nib of the Surwax to the Ahab, you'll see it's a completely different nib size. Of course, you've got these regular noodlers, flex pens. You know the ones I'm talking about, right? Okay, I'll grab one. Okay. Here we go. This is one of those regular old-fashioned type noodlers. The Nib Creeper flex pens. As you can see, these nibs are a little bit like these two, but I'm not sure. Okay, I'll try it out. I'm not sure whether they will fit. I don't think so. I think this one is not rounded enough. You know what? That may actually fit, but will it fit into the pen? Isn't that funny? What about the other way around? For some reason, I mean, this seemed to me a bit more rounded, so I'm holding the Noodler's nib in my hand right now. This does not want to go in, so it doesn't work the other way around. It does seem to work this way around, so you can put that in your Noodlers. Of course, now I can't get it out. There we go. Okay, so this is Surwax. All kinds of nibs here, bloody hell. Here we got the feed, Noodlers. Just put that in. Decent nib alignment. Tine alignment is okay. You know what? Let's put this in the Shootout too. I'll ink that up too, give you an idea of all the pens. No, I'm not going to use a Conrad because I won't. I think that's going to be a little much. And you know what? Then there's going to be people saying, why don't you put the Conrad in? Okay, I'm grabbing a Conrad. There we bloody go. 1 second. All the bloody flex in the bloody world. Okay, put this back together. Put this in. No, put that in. There we go. Breather tube. I should need it. I need a nurse for this. Breather tube. Converter. Barrel. Thank you, nurse. Anyone willing to volunteer to wear a naughty nurse outfit here is more than welcome. Conrad. Conrad, fascinating little pen. Piston unit, housing unit, you can just pull that out. Nothing spectacular here. Pull that back in again. Whoops, I do actually align some stuff. There we go. You know about that. Wipe your fingers, because there will be some silicone grease in your hands. You don't want to get that in your nib and feed. I'll just use an extra buffer here. Nib and feed, same as Ahab. There we go. So, put that back in, and then it's fun. It's time for the big inking up. For heaven's sakes, push the nib in all the way. You know what I did. You know I bent my pen. This way it should work. My fault, but nevertheless. Okay. Waterman. Simple ink. Decent ink. Works well. Conrad. That's a lot of ink. Little sheet of testing paper. Writes. Blind cap back on. Cap it. Nib Creeper. Okay, got that to right. Surwax MB. Got that to right. And then all we need is the Ahab. And we can get this party started. There we go. Okay. So we got them all lined up. Now it's time for them to write. As you know, I usually do these writing samples in a notebook, which lately has been a Rhodia notebook. Sorry, just taking some paper out here. But today, because I have a shootout with 4 pens, I wanted to have something with a somewhat larger space. So that's what I've got right here. This is again Rhodia, but this is a notepad, not a notebook. Let's start with some simple stuff. Names. This is the Ahab. And this is the amount of line variation I can get out of this. The quick brown fox. Whoops, railroading. Don't do that to me. Come on. You can do better than that. I just inked them up. That's the amount of line variation I get typically from an Ahab. Conrad, same nib, same feed as the Ahab. Nib is smoother, but I have smoothed that out myself. That's the amount of line variation. I think we seem to get a little bit more line variation from the Conrad than from the Ahab. One thing you have to bear in mind is that with these noodler's pens, you can fiddle around a bit. So I could pull out the nib a little further, and then the tines will spread open a bit further on the Ahab. So don't be fooled by these, absolute line widths. You can probably get this out of the Ahab too. That's about the widest. Now, if I put that next to this, I don't think it's any wider, actually. It's just maybe I applied some more pressure here, whatever. I try to keep this as consistent as I can, but it's a little difficult. I'm afraid of this pen, because it took me a long time to get this to write. So what we have here is a Nib Creeper. I'll put it down as Creeper. This gives sick amounts of line variation. I don't recall this being so pronounced. I don't know what happened, but right now the amount of line variation in this is beyond belief. Also, the railroading is beyond belief. It took me a while. See, it took me a while to get it to write, but holy crap, this lays down a lot of ink. I think this is the widest it gets. Doesn't write right now. Sorry. It doesn't write at all. Come on. Never had any issues with these pens. I'm not sure whether I did something wrong. Anyway, a lot of line variation, as you can see. There we go again. Yeah, okay, so this extreme variation, it's got some trouble keeping up, but that's, look at that, I mean, that's a huge amount of ink. Try to come back to that. Then finally, Surwax. Not bad. Okay, so what I want to do now, try and give you an update. I'll put them one under the other. So we've got, this is not going to be pretty writing, but it's going to flex to the max. That's a lot of pressure. This is the most amount, like the biggest amount of pressure I can put on there. You see it railroads like crazy, but that's, I mean, it's so much, spreading the tines that much, I mean, there's physical limit to how far you can spread these things. Okay, so we got an Ahab, we got a Conrad. I love the smoothness of this nib, by the way. I haven't used this for a while, but now I notice. That's going to sound arrogant, but I don't mean it that way. I did a good job smoothing this nib. I really feel a difference between this and the stock Ahab nib. That's interesting. Not bragging or anything. That's really not my intention. Then we got the Creeper. Oh, I hope this is going to work. Saint Nibius, please help me. So much for Saint Bloody Nibius. Oh, come on, you can do better. That's more like it, son. Oh, Danny boy. No, 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 no. Don't know why that came up, but... Okay, so I think we can all agree that the Creeper gives a huge amount of line variation. Very, very nice. And then we have the Surwax. I'll try to keep those in view. I know I'm aligning this pen rather funnily. The reason for that is to try to bring out the flex as well as I can. Best I can do. Okay, so currently I would say, in order of most flex to least flex, 1, 2, 3, 4. However, there are other things you can take into consideration. I mean, it's not all about the... Let's add a bit more there. We got some space. I'm really pushing these pens hard here. It is, of course, not all about the nib. I mean, flex is nice, but there may be some other things you want to take into account here. One of them being design. I love the Ahab design. I think it's simple, it's effective, it will definitely get the job done for me. It's great that you can turn it into an eyedropper. I think that's a very nice bonus. But the design is not for everyone. I know people who think this is a very ugly pen. Again, I personally don't, but, you know, there are differences in taste. Conrad. I don't use the Conrad that much, and it still has that typical noodler's resin smell, whereas my Ahab, on the Ahab, it's completely worn off. I do think we have to say that the line, it's a very consistent line here. It hasn't really railroaded, so that's a good thing. Nib Creeper. Oh dear Saint Nibius, please help me again once more. Tine alignment. That's an issue here. Look at that. Look at that. Okay, it railroads, but still look at that. Okay, it railroads, there's no writing anymore. That's some serious lineage. Look at that. Beautiful. I've really pushed this nib very, very far. But the results are just stunning. So, if you're in the market for a flex pen, this is what you can get. I mean, if you're in the market for a cheap flex pen, you could get a wet noodle, you could get a vintage pen, but you're going to pay. If you want something cheaper, then your options are a Nib Creeper, a Surwex MB, or, you know, another Surwex pen, or any pen. I mean, this is a pen with the same flex nib by Surwex, this is by Airmail, all the same nib. So, I mean, you can work with some different pens according to your liking. Some of these are, like this one, are in fact actually eyedroppers. So if you need that, then, you know, you can get a Conrad, or you could get an Ahab. Which one is my favorite? When it comes to pens, this used to be my favorite. Of the three Noodler's pens, I think this is my favorite. I like the design the best, and I like the way it writes the best, the size, I like that best. When it comes to class, I think this pen, this is the only one in this, you know, lineup that's all metal. All the other ones are resin. So this one may look a bit more high-end. It's got some issues. All of these pens have got issues of some kind. But I think this one looks the fanciest. If you need an eyedropper pen, then you need an Ahab. If you need large ink capacity, then I think the two of these will work well. And this one just has a push-type converter, as I've shown you. Is there anything wrong with that? No, of course not. But it will hold less ink than a piston filler, and definitely less ink than an eyedropper. So all of these things are considerations that you'll have to take into account when you're shopping for a cheap flex pen. They're all nice, they're all interesting, but, you know, you'll have to make a decision. I hope this was somewhat useful. I'm sorry some of the pens railroaded a bit, but I did my best to minimize discomfort. I hope this is going to be useful, and I'll see you later. Bye bye.